Welcome to today's MULTI-ACT Digital Toolbox demonstration event, strengthening the implementation of mission-oriented responsible research and innovation in the field of brain disease. So brain disease disorders account for more than 35% of all diseases in Europe. And the MULTI-ACT project started in 2018 with an aim to increase the impact of health research on people with brain diseases. Its ambition was to create and implement a new model to allow for the effective cooperation of all relevant stakeholders. Throughout the project, this work has proven to be applicable in defining the scope of health research, as well as new metrics for the evaluation of its results. The framework of the project is intended for multi-stakeholder research initiatives promoted by health research funding and performance organizations that may already have been grouped in a multi-stakeholder initiative or that are willing to start conducting their research and innovation with a multi-stakeholder and co-accountable approach to reach a transformational mission. The MULTI-ACT project has worked with patients and patient organizations, academics, private and public stakeholders to develop brand new tools to assess the value of research. Today, the project is ready to showcase the digital toolbox that will guide mission-oriented, responsible research and innovation to the impactful implementation of their research activities. The need for and importance of this tool is today even more important than ever, even better than when the project first launched, in fact. And that's because the COVID pandemic is highlighting the vulnerability of our health systems. And this context must be used to ensure institutions realize the importance of good participatory research to bring about understanding and solutions that can make a change. The MULTI-ACT experts of this demo will thus present each of the components of the toolbox, and we'll finish with a look at the actual toolbox at the end before getting into a Q&A session together. So that's what we'll cover today, and let me walk you through how today will be shaped. It's a 90-minute session, and you're having my opening remarks. I'm George Valiotis, the Executive Director at the European Health Management Association. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce you to Paola Zaratin, and she's going to tell you about what is MULTI-ACT. And then we're going to move on to the MULTI-ACT governance model, principles and solutions for accountability, presented by Andrea Gavazzi from Ernst & Young. Each of the speakers will speak for 10 minutes, and we're going to go from one speaker to the next. So Paola, then Andrea, and then after that, Deborah Bortorello about the framework. So you'll see that at 12:25. And then we'll go directly on to Michele Andreas from the University of Trento, who will speak for 10 minutes. And then finally, we'll have George Tsakarakis. Of course, I've glitched that after we made a joke of it earlier. And Sophia Tsekiridou from Intrasoft. Apologies, George, for making a mess of your name. So no worries. So they're going to talk about tying it all together, and they're going to showcase the toolbox to you. If you've got questions at any time, just tap them into the chat box, and then the speakers will type a response to you if they can. But otherwise, we've also got 20 minutes at the end where you can ask questions both in the chat box or you can ask them live. So if you wanted to ask a live question, you can just put your hand up, and at the end of the session, we'll switch on your camera so you can participate. Because this session's for you. This is for you to really understand the toolbox, what the opportunities are, how you can use it. So make the most of that time. We are recording this webinar, and of course, I'm sure you're all practiced at this. We've muted microphones so we can keep the audio clear. Now that we know who you are, I want to hand you over to Paola Zaratin, who will talk about what is MULTI-ACT. Over to you, Paola.
Thank you, George, and good morning, everybody. So as Director of Scientific Research at the Italian MS Society, that is member of Multiple Sclerosis International Federation and coordinator of MULTI-ACT project, I would like to start by thanking you to attend this workshop today. And thank you in advance for providing insights during the discussion we will be having during the workshop. This is really, we are looking forward to your valuable perspective to turn MULTI-ACT into a reality. So what is MULTI-ACT? First of all, MULTI-ACT is a project that has received funding from European Union under the Responsible Research Innovation Horizon 2020 program. And I'd like to start by saying that the multi-act stands for the acknowledgement that in a time of challenges that call for a mission-oriented governance, in a time of challenge, especially in the health sector, and especially in during the COVID pandemic, new multi-stakeholder and multidisciplinary managerial models of cooperation are needed that guarantee long-term of investment, and not only economic, but also in the social sector. And I think that you all agree with me on this point. And this is well described in the Marianne Mazzucato report of European Union. So this is really in line with the recommendation of Responsible Research Innovation Program of European Union. And indeed, the essential driver to enable mission-oriented governance approach and better social contracts has been indicated by the European Union in this report that include the project portfolio of Responsible Research Innovation Program of European Union. The program is Science with and for Society. And indeed, this program provide recommendation for cooperation between science and society that in this time in the health sector is very important, as well as indicate that pioneering scientific excellence with stakeholder awareness and responsibility is instrumental to meet the challenge. And what is multi-act? Indeed, multi-act is a model, a managerial framework, is going to provide you with a guide and as a path forward for participatory, anticipatory governance in health research and care. Why was it such important? Because we need to learn and how to manage participatory organization and initiative, but be also ready to react to external changes like the COVID pandemic. And the multi-act is indeed part of the RRI project portfolio, and as you can see here, respond according to European Union, aim to meet the gaps, to fill the gaps regarding public engagement and participatory governance. So this is particularly challenging, this is particularly needed, this such a kind of model in the area of brain disorders. Indeed, just a few numbers to give you an idea of what we mean when we speak about transformational governance and transformational mission. When you have such a complex challenges, you need really to work in a mission-oriented approach and in a collective manner. And so in 2017, there was 380 million brain disorder diagnoses alone were counted in 28 EU countries. Brain disorder overall cost about over 800 billion euro. And last but not least, is more and more, there are more and more evidence that there is a direct neurological impact of the virus in more than 2 over the 3 patients with COVID. So, I mean, there are many recommendations in the communities that a coordinated One Health governance that involve all the stakeholders is needed for a structured mission-oriented research and care approach in brain health domain. And this is indeed the ambition of a multi-act managerial model that create and implement a collective research impact framework that we believe, of course, we are here for because we believe that this represents a timely opportunity to structure a model of participatory, anticipatory governance, especially when you have a transformational mission, such as in the health sector. But of course, we are here today with you to understand also, based on your perspective, whether this is really will also help to meet your needs. And of course, let's say the aim is to increase impact of health research on citizens with brain condition through innovative co-accountability approach. Why we innovative with innovative co-accountability approach? Because essentially we always acknowledge the importance of cooperation, but it's very important to manage the collaboration, the cooperation, in order for all the participants to clearly see a return of investment on doing this. So for this reason, we translated the co-accountability strategy, innovative strategy, new governance criteria, and of which in the health sector, the patient engagement strategy one is central, is core. The MULTI-ACT is going to provide guideline on how to do science with and of patient input. And more important, the other pillars of the co-accountability strategy is going to provide you an impact assessment scorecard to measure impact and return of investment of all the stakeholders according to multidimensional approach, as we're going to hear soon from Michele. And all this is translating into digital toolbox that is going to help you and not to discourage you to use the model, because aim to guide you through the model, as we are going to hear from George. So of course, the overall goal of this model is to promote institutional changes, foster institution to work in a different manner, especially when they are facing transformational mission. And we have already been testing several initiatives and stakeholders that are helping us in a tremendous manner to really understand whether this is a solution that is going to meet their challenges, as you can see in these slides. And let me finish with these slides. So just to share the message that the inspirational principle of MULTI-ACT is act like an organization and think like a movement. And more, we need to behave in this way. We need to think about our own business, but also we need to think like a movement that can be brain disorder movement, climate change movement. And therefore, we expect that MULTI-ACT is going to help us to move behind avoid the risk, like for the, let's say, the no-profit sector, or enhancing reputation like the profit sector, and toward improving core value creation ability by addressing major strategic issue or challenges. And I think this is applicable to any different kind of sector, not only brain disorders. And I'm looking forward to your, of course, feedback, and stop here. And again, your perspective are very valuable to MULTI-ACT Consortium.
Thank you very much, Paola. That really does set us up to really clearly understand the whole MULTI-ACT project and its intentions. Reminder to everybody, if you have any questions, you can start to type them into the chat box right now, or you can wait and put your hand up later, and at the end we'll have question times. I'm going to move right on to Deborah Bortorello from the International. She's also at the Italian Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, and she will present next.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Deborah Bertorello. I'm the leader of the work package dedicated to enable science with and of patient input. And I will briefly present you the MULTI-ACT patients engagement strategy. So, but what does it mean to capture patient voice in responsible research and innovation? The thinking behind responsible research wants to challenge our notion of good science as such. And it targets that excellence, validity, and relevance are connected by engaging patients in the research continuum as key stakeholder. So MULTI-ACT aims to enable science with and of patient input to provide a scientific approach on patients' engagement. Because engaging patients as key stakeholder in the research process and also measuring the impact of research on outcomes that matter most to them are instrumental to make stakeholders co-accountable for the mission and agenda of brain condition research. And this will allow to create a unique ecosystem in health research and care. So in particular, to enable science with the patient input, MULTI-ACT has developed guidelines and tools to address the governance criteria that claim for a participatory governance and also effective stakeholder engagement. While to enable science of patient input, MULTI-ACT proposed a co-accountability model where the patient-reported dimension is a core and transversal dimension. MULTI-ACT perform a landscape analysis in order to assess existing experience of patient engagement in research. And we found out that much of the current guidelines for patients engagement focuses on enabling expert patients in the medicine life cycle. MULTI-ACT proposed a complementary strategy, a roadmap that aimed to capture the experiential knowledge of patients. That is a knowledge that complements the expertise of the other stakeholders. And so we propose to acknowledge this knowledge and use it as a valuable asset for research and care. So the big challenge for patient engagement is also always to ensure the representativeness of the patient community. And MULTI-ACT proposed a model to enable the transition from an individual to a collective patient's experiential knowledge. And for doing this, the professional management of all the stakeholders is effective in allowing this transition. And also, patients' organization play a pivotal role in enabling the empowering of collective patients' experience and knowledge in research. This will allow to better prioritize the needs of patients and also of society. So the three innovative assets of the MULTI-ACT patient engagement guidelines are, as mentioned, a MULTI-ACT governance model that includes innovative boards and functions to manage the stakeholder engagement and ensure representativeness and co-accountability. Innovative training to empower patients and stakeholders to cooperate and to integrate patients' experience and knowledge in the research process. Training that complementing existing training to make patients experts. And also the importance of understanding and measuring the impact of research on outcomes that really matter to patients. So this flow summarizes the value of the MULTI-ACT patient engagement strategy. And in particular, the strategy is mission-oriented. So starting from a transformational mission, we propose to engage patients both in the governance of a multi-stakeholder initiative and along its implementation. And we have identified a 7-step path, both at program or at project level. And by engaging patients, we will be able to produce outcomes that matter to them. And if we are sustainable in producing those outcomes, then we will have created value. MULTI-ACT proposed a roadmap to facilitate the adoption of the strategy. And specifically, the roadmap consists of 4 actions: the setting up of an engagement coordination team with a trained figure, the selection of research priorities and steps where patient engagement is instrumental to meet the mission of the initiative, the development of specific engagement plans for each identified research priority and steps, and also the selection of indicators to be used to measure the success and also the effectiveness of this engagement. For doing so, MULTI-ACT aims to facilitate the user and provide guidelines, tutorials, and also operative tools within the digital toolbox. In particular, with respect to patients engagement, we have a patients engagement plan digital functionality, We have a patient reported outcomes data collection function. We have indicator to measure the return on patients' engagement and many other operative tools, because we really aim to provide, to facilitate the user in the application of the model. So my presentation ends here. It was just a brief overview on the strategy.
That was a great presentation. It's really given us better information. And now to build onto that idea about accountability, I want to hand over to Andrea Gavazzi, who's from Ernst & Young, and he's going to present about the governance model, the principles and solutions for accountability. So Andrea, over to you.
So good morning, everyone. This is the a third very important element of the overall model that Paola before just explained, which is the governance model. First of all, just a quick overview on the path that we made that led us to the identification of these governance models, which started from the benchmarking analysis of around 350 multi-stakeholder initiatives, both from medical fields and other economic sectors, from which we started and filtered down to a total of 83 multi-stakeholder initiatives that was shortlisted for our analysis that focused on best practices, specific tools and best experience that could be implemented in our model. So these practices eventually were gathered up in 5 final criteria and 19 sub-criteria that constitute the MULTI-ACT governance model. I will go deeper in that later. Here, just to say that after this, work, we came up with a first release of the governance model that, of course, had to be tested in order to see the first results and most importantly, gather some feedbacks in order to integrate them and get a more verified version of the governance model. So those are 2 of the initiatives that were mentioned before by Paola, in which we started implementing the model with the aim to gather feedbacks and complete the definition of the model. What is the MULTI-ACT governance model? The MULTI-ACT governance model is a set of 5 criteria, which are the main tenets that constitute the model, and which are detailed in 19 principles. So we will have barely 3 or 4 sub-criteria for each criteria. Every sub-criteria is then detailed in a total of 41 recommendations, which are practical solutions. We can see them as hints in order to implement the model for the promoter of the initiative. And here we have a general overview of the governance model. You see that the criteria are not located at the same way. We have an overarching principle, which is the one referring to the stakeholder engagement, clear, effective, and inclusive methodology of stakeholder engagement. That means that we can see it as a bit more important than the other, if I may, because we have to see it reflected while implementing all the other 4. So it's something that should be always present, even while implementing the other principle. The important thing is the other 4, so mission agenda, participatory governance, the management of the initiative, and co-accountability measurement can be considered of course, in chronological order while implementing them, but they are always intertwined and link each other. And their implementation should be considered as an ongoing process or circular process, because of course, while achieving some results under one sub-criteria can affect the way in which we implement another sub-criteria under another criterion. I will have in the next slide a quick overview on the most important features of each criteria. So I'll go through the 5 criteria, starting from the mission. Defining a shared mission and agenda means firstly to identify the change that the initiative wants to achieve. On the basis of this, the initiative shall identify the agenda, so the actions and the program in order to achieve the change. Under this frame, the methodology that MULTI-ACT suggests as suitable for this aim is the theory of change methodology that starts from the understanding of the context and then the identification of long-term goal, and starting from that, backward mapping the outcomes, the outputs that shall be achieved, and then the agenda with the action to be taken. The second criterion focused on the structure. MULTI-ACT suggests a structure that shall be balanced between the coordinating and decision-making body, which are the leadership board, advised by a stakeholder advisory board within which the patient has a specific role. And on the other side, this shall be balanced with a set of bodies like committees and working groups, which shall ensure balancement between the involvement of the different stakeholders. The third criterion, the stakeholder engagement, under the aspects, we identified some key phases to be followed in order to ensure that the engagement of stakeholder actually has taken place and has taken place in an effective manner. These phases see the plan first, so the identification of the stakeholders categories which are affected by the initiative and can contribute to the mission of the initiative, and then the preparation, so the mapping of their needs and the risk which are connected to the involvement and the degree of the involvement of such categories. Then the implementation, meaning the definition of activities that will allow the participation of every category of stakeholders. And finally, the review and improvement phase in order to ensure that the initiative and their performances is connected with the context in which it exerts, and is able to monitor and evaluate the feedbacks that from the external context the initiative receives. The fourth criterion relates to the management and coordination overall of the initiative. In this regard, here the main recommendation relates to the maintenance of flexibility. Paola just said before, COVID pandemic showed us how important it is to be able to be flexible and to adjust the agenda while keeping the mission, but trying to reach it in different ways. In order to be able to gather feedbacks and external perspective, the initiative shall publish periodic progress results, as well as keep consultation events on a regular basis, and shall be able to review in a flexible way the agenda and the program and actions. Finally, the fifth criterion focus on communication. That means that the initiative under this aspect shall be very, keep always in mind that it is accountable toward an external context and an external community, and in this regard it shall be present that a progress report should be published regularly, as well as any open platform online or other tools that can ensure the communication between the reference community and the initiative, that shall be transparent and absolutely timely. So this was the quick overview on the governance model. I'm sorry for being so quick, but I'm sure we can be back on if we have questions on it, and I hope to be sticking time, so I can leave the floor to Michele, I guess.
Andrea, you've done great. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was certainly very deep of information, but really thorough. And I'll remind people they've got time for questions at the end. So if I imagine for me, that brought up a lot of questions. I've got a few I'll be asking you shortly. And anyone else, you can type your question in or save it and speak it out at the end. Now I'm going to hand you over to Michele Andreas. He's from the University of Trento, and he's going to talk about the multi-act Master Scorecard. Over to you.
This is just a draft of the presentation, and the 5 dimensions of the Master Scorecard are in the flag of multi-act project. We have excellence, patients reported dimension, efficiency, efficacy, mission, and social, and at the core is the core and transversal dimension, which is patient reported dimension. The Master Scorecard is a tool to evaluate and measure the research impact in all the 5 dimensions. It provides a list of indicators, and through the materiality analysis, the Master Scorecard allows the selection of indicators under each dimension relevant for any research initiative. We defined that the starting point was an integrated accountability model, which is a conceptual framework, and from this model we defined the collective research impact framework, CRIF, and the current health research impact framework. And the CRIF model is in some way at the roots of multi-act. Then we carried out a process of indicator co-selection, creating the database of indicators for the four CRIF dimensions, and we defined the accountability steps, which are the phases for co-selecting the indicator in multi-stakeholder initiatives. And the next step was a stakeholder engagement to based on the identification of key stakeholder, and to involve stakeholder in the selection of the indicators and in evaluating the effectiveness of the model. And through the stakeholder engagement, we had a list of interview with key stakeholders. And through this interview, we defined the stakeholder-oriented metrics, which are a refinement of the indicator and to measure performance in health sector organization. And and we defined a short list of indicators. And At this point, we were able to define the Master Scorecard, which is a long list of key indicators according to frequency in literature and relevance to multi-act. So these are the 4 steps we had in our process: conceptualization, expert consultation, development of the scorecard, and the Master Scorecard. More in detail, we defined, we started with a long list of more than 500 indicators under 4 dimensions, a subset of the database, and through different steps to the final version of the Master Scorecard, which on the 4 dimensions has 115 indicators in 45 aspects. And the co-creation process of the scorecard is based on the collective framework refinement and to build the indicator database on the basis of literature initiative review. We explored a range of impact measurement frameworks and potential indicators for health sector organization. And as I told you, the key stakeholder interviews to recognize the different perception of CRIF dimension and the most relevant aspects indicator for measuring impact. Characteristics of the scorecard, it is neutral and customizable because it is flexible, not to be used as a fixed set of indicators. The starting point to be applied and tested, and it can be tailored to specific project initiatives. It is dynamic and open because it is adaptable and open to new indicators as per specific needs. It is, of course, usable because it can be used, customized, and applied by a broad range of users, and indicators to be tailored by the final user for specific initiatives. And it is comprehensive because it's a catalog of core and additional indicators covering a wide range of aspects to assess the impact of health research. How to use the Master Scorecard? The Master Scorecard, it's based on the 5 CRIF dimensions, and the dimensions are used to define the accountability perspective, and it is a filter to select one dimension. It's the first level of the use of the Master Scorecard. Then we have 45 aspects to define the specific assessment perspective, and we need to use the second level filter to select one aspect to be measured. And finally, we have the indicators. As a result, you will find 1 core or 2 additional indicators, and open possible to add more indicators that fit better with your initiatives. So we have 5 dimensions, 45 aspects, and 115 indicators. And for any specific initiatives, the user has to select a number of maximal 12 indicators. So it is flexible and usable since the user is not obliged to use all indicators. Okay, I think we can skip this slide, and this is the draft of the presentation is okay. We are at the end. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Michele. Really great overview of the scorecard and how that can be used. I've already got questions for you, but I'll save them for the end. And I'll remind people again, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, or you can ask them at the end. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the final presentation, which is going to tie everything together. And joining us from Microsoft today, we have George Sakirakis and Sofia Tekiridou, and they will be presenting. So over to you two.
Okay, hello everybody. Just a glimpse of the voice behind in the favor of also leaving more time for Q&A at the end, and also I will go really fast or omit things that are common to all sites and tools, for instance, the registration process and whatnot. So The address is toolbox.multiact.eu, is a subdomain of the official multi-act domain. And upon visit, first of all, we have an overview of what the project is about, and also for every terms and entities that need further explaining, everything is interlinked to the toolbox manual, which immediately takes you to a specific section of whatever it is you want to learn more about. So I will omit totally the create an account, but basically it's just the usual stuff of agreeing to terms and conditions, and then receiving a unique email for you to open your account at the toolbox. So this is already a pre-made account. Few words about the actual first interface. It's on the top left, you have all the initiatives you are either part of, or you are the promoter of. You can either add more or check for invitations from other initiatives that you may have received, and you can accept or deny. And we have the multi-act manual, as you already mentioned, and then we have also, regardless of everything else, and how you can proceed and test your initiative by the series of actions and steps that are prepared. You can also browse the Master Scorecard by dimension, by aspect, and by aspect group, as Michele already mentioned. So back to our initiatives. Speedy process. Let's just create an initiative. So this is the base interface of every initiative. You can tend to the multi-stakeholders or invitations and memberships and the roles that are appointed, depending on which the members have view access and editing access in different parts of the toolbox. You have for every section that reveals itself when the previous step is completed, you have sufficient explanations, and again cross-linking to the manual, so to help you with the process. So the first step would be to add information about the initiative, like stakeholder type of the promoter, or number of organizations, core activities, which stakeholder member types are included, as well as your geographical coverage. And finally, you can also use it as a portfolio for uploading documents of the initiative, properly annotating them as to what their nature is. So having completed that step, we see now that a new section has unveiled itself. It's the baseline analysis form. So it's the questionnaire that measures the compliance of the initiative. This is a multi-page web questionnaire that also is dynamic to its content, and so different sections are revealed and then closed depending on the user's actions. So we'll just go fast to the last page. Of course, being it's such a substantially in size, there's also the ability to save a draft and return to it at a later point in time. But for the needs of the presentation, let's say that, okay, we concluded it, so we submit it. We have a nice tailored, a way of viewing the results as well. There's a downloading PDF of all our answers and links to our uploaded files. And above that, we also, for all these intermediate steps of the initiative can return to update, alter their answers, and being a dynamic process, that means that the resulting score will change. So the recommendations of how the initiative can better help and increase their adherence to the multi-act model. So for instance, here we see that they things can be improved regarding mission agenda. And so again, this content is dynamic and produced based on the answers of the questionnaire, of the baseline questionnaire. So now we see that the new section has unveiled itself, and it's the patient engagement plan, for which again it's a quite elaborate questionnaire and form in which, based on user selecting, for instance, if we were to select here the step that we include a step in breaking down boundaries, that means that we will get an extra sub-content that we have to answer, which would finally bring us to saving either a draft or updating, as I said, because everything works also in a circular way. So then you can again view the patient engagement plan or participate in group discussions in a form or a forum, and download it, of course, again in a nicely tailored PDF. And now we see that the core, you could say, section of and step of the toolbox, which is the materiality analysis, is revealed, for which you can create a new instance of the materiality analysis, and then you go consult the stakeholders of the initiative by creating the invitation list with tailored text for the invitation, the actual invitation, and the reminder, and then also add members by informal emails. And you also need to, it's obligatory to select the stakeholder category, because the prerequisite, as it was defined from the project, is that in order to have sufficient participation of the stakeholders, you need at least an X number of at least 4 different stakeholder categories from the initiative. So that would create the email list for which you music category. For which you send out mails and invitations. You are able to also watch over the participation, and actually it would be best now if we turn to an already created. So for the administration panel, you can see the participation real time, and also the response rate and response frequency, so as to better administer the whole process. And finally, when it's all is done, you can close the survey. Again, it's something that you're allowed only if the prerequisites are first met, and which would mean that this the final step for the promoter, which is to go through the results, and for every indicator, they have the ability, if another indicator exists, to select their alternative one. They have the description and other information, also the score that it has accumulated. Actually, one thing that is crucial to show you is the participation to the materiality analysis from the participant side. Show it at the end, so we have time to cover the last round. So when finally the promoter has crystallized the final number of indicators that will be the actual impact assessment dashboard of the initiative, the final results are both visible as also in the participation status, but also for the actual indicators that were selected in the end, for which they can view the full indicator info, as well as the final step that is in a way that the showcase, we could proof concept, we show the actual more tangible way of measuring assessment, which is through the upload of output of patient database, which basically is based on the HUDS questionnaire, which queries the patient's well-being, also in anxiety, which, for instance, now I've uploaded some test data, which first of all, you can have it per patient or per group of patients, and while applying filters both in date period or if they are currently under drug medication or gender-wise, the graphs and the statistical analysis is dynamically updated so as to show this. So if I don't know how I'm with time, should I also show the materiality analysis as the voting process?
Hello from myself as well. This is Sofia Zequerido. Me and George are both from the Research Innovation Development Department of Microsoft International. Of course, we have tried, as you see from the demonstration, to transfer all the knowledge produced and outputs of our partners in MULTI-ACT into MULTI-ACT Toolbox functionalities. It has become to be quite a complex toolbox with many interactions, but capabilities also for the users to use, as you see. So I don't know if George, you're ready to demonstrate also the materiality analysis.
Yes,
okay.
I am.
Give the floor now to George.
So the actual invitations that all the stakeholders will receive would again contain instructions about how they are to complete the questionnaire, which basically is that for every dimension they have to grade at least 2 aspects for every dimension with a grade of 3 to 5, which collectively from all the results, and also first with an algorithm that bases itself also in the versatile representation of stakeholder groups. So first there's a concatenation of results within the same stakeholder groups, and then from all the groups between them. So the users are, of course, able to familiarize themselves with the actual definition and some information regarding the aspect to vote, and which is the way that we are collecting all the preferences. And of course, also it's a personalized form, meaning that there are also mechanisms to ensure that there is 1 vote per stakeholder. So for instance, now to showcase you this, I tried to post the form from an email that has already voted, which means that it got rejected. But overall, this is the basic concept of how that comes to be. Maybe as a last note, we can also say about the members and either incoming invitations to you from other initiatives that are requesting your membership, or from the initiative itself, either with a list of members or a specific member from which, upon their invitations, you inviting them, you also have the ability to apply and to appoint them specific role. For instance, the basic ones being if they are able to co-create the patient engagement plan as a member of the ECT committee, or maybe share the administrative chores with the admin of the initiative. So there's of course a ton of information and things to explore in the site. The toolbox manual, of course, is the thing that puts it all together, and it's a big help for the user to browse through the site and different functionalities. And I think that was a world record in our presenting the site. For more, you can always register, log in, and then try it out, and hope it's to your liking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, George. Yes, of course, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them.
We'll now open up for questions. So I've been getting questions sent to me privately on the chat box, and you're welcome to do that. If you don't want to ask your question to the whole of the chat, then you're welcome to just select me in your list and just ask it to me, and I'll ask it for you if you feel more comfortable. I'm going to start with all the speakers, and I want to ask you a very difficult question if you're happy for me to start with a really uncomfortable, hard question. Yes, the silence is a yes. So what I notice is this is a fantastic, comprehensive project. Really what you've done is you've thought of all of the possible pieces around making this meaningful and purposeful and productive. So my question, because it's got so many parts, is where should people start? There are so many criteria, sub-criteria, lots of recommendations, lots of elements that, Andrea showed us, that Michele showed us. What I'd say to you is, how do people begin? Because what would you advise somebody if they're feeling overwhelmed by just how many pieces there are? And now I might start with Andrea, with you, if you don't mind. And then I might go to you, Michele, if you don't mind contributing, and of course, any of the other speakers. But let's start with, how do you step in feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, I wasn't certain if I could start or someone else wish to. Well, from the governance model point of view, of course, the indication is to focus first on the third criteria that I mentioned, that is stakeholder engagement. Because it is the core feature, and it shall be present at any stage, from the beginning to the very end of the implementation, but even later on during the application of the model. From this, if we are talking about the governance model, the first step is to look at how implement the stakeholder engagement. And in these recommendations, which are gathered under this third criteria, can be of help. Well, they wish to be of help, we can say. I don't know if your question, maybe it's a bit larger, so not about only the governance model, but in general, what about how to start when willing for an initiative willing to implement multi-act model. Well, under this aspect, the first step that we foresee is a baseline analysis that can be carried out online with the digital toolbox that George showed us. That as a first step help the initiative.
Michele, are you saying that if people are in the audience today and they're thinking, where do I begin? Would you say to them, go and do that? Yeah, exactly. So first do the baseline analysis. That it's useful for the initiative to see the overall level of alignment with the multi-act governance model, and for the consortium for multi-act. It enabled the identification of the main, areas for improvement, because from the baseline analysis we can see which are the main elements to be aligned in the initiative. Okay. Hope to be cleared. Okay, good. Thanks, Michele. Andrea, what I want to do now is also ask the audience, even if you don't have a question, why don't you type into the chat box and let me know, where is your thinking at today? Like, have you joined today because you want to adapt it, you want to adopt this model? Are you just curious about this? Are you in the middle of a process and wanting to make sure you do your process well and see whether multi-act can help you? If you've got anything you can just say in the chat box about where are you right now, please do that. And again, I'd encourage you to do it in the open chat, but if you feel a little bit more discreet and you just want to message me privately, you're welcome to do that. I see a question from Anne Bierman, and she asked if we will share slides. And I assume Sabri or Chiara, my colleagues, that they'll be up on our site or on the MULTI-ACT site.
George, while we're waiting for questions, just a little thing to complement Andrea's notion is that, of course, the information is quite substantial and maybe intimidating at first sight, but that's the reason that the site is revealed piece by piece. So there is a designated path that simplifies the whole process. So for instance, the baseline analysis is the first thing that the actual pathway, opens up to you. So it's easier than it maybe look first.
Right. So that's encouraging. Thanks, George. I can see Sabri's responded to Arlene to say that the slides will be up on the EHMA site, and so stay tuned for those. There's a lot of great information in that, so do check them out. Then also I can see, Arlene, you've also asked, did you address unique challenges to stakeholder engagement among people with cognitive impairments? So maybe I'll come to, is that a question for Paola or Deborah?
Yes. Paola, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for the question. Indeed, we start from the case study of multiple sclerosis that, as you know, also deal with cognitive impairments. And for this specific aspect, it's really important that we engage also the family member and caregivers. In fact, in MULTI-ACT, when we speak about patients, we refer to the people that has the disease, but also with their families and caregivers that can support the process and can also help in capturing the experiential knowledge of patients. I don't know, Paula, if you want to add more to this specific question.
Well, the answer to the question whether we intend to use it also for cognitive impairment, certainly yes. And one aspect that maybe you are interested to know is that as patient-reported dementia, we included in our list of indicator patient-reported outcome. That indeed are patient-reported outcome also aiming at the evaluate the cognitive impairment aspects, and certainly measuring impact of your initiative on aspects that cognitive aspects matter most to patient is included in our Master Scorecard and is a concrete option. So if you are interested in this aspect, we will be happy to provide you additional information.
Is the MULTI-ACT framework just for brain disease?
Absolutely no. And I wanted to just to perhaps also add a few words on the previous question. I mean, MULTI-ACT framework should be seen as a whole. And of course, we are fully aware that could be time and energy consuming, but as soon as you have, transformational mission, you can really understand that using the whole framework and start from the beginning and making sure that you are aligned to the governance criteria to baseline analysis, as Andrea said, is very important. But indeed, is a managerial model for collaborative initiative that have big challenges to face and where a single organization cannot make it, but need to make it together with the other organization and thinking like all the movement of this organization that have common shared interest and agenda.
I love how you said that. My favorite quote of yours is act like an organization, think like a movement.
Yes. Yeah.
But what does that mean then in practice? So if somebody here today is joining us and they're thinking, oh yeah, I want to use that in my service. I want to I guess is what you're saying is this isn't just made for an NGO or for a hospital. It's for more than that. It's about partnership.
Absolutely, absolutely. What does it mean? It means that of course each of us need to do their organizational business and making sure that we are keeping on doing this the organizational business. But in order to meet some mission and agenda, you need to partner, as I show in my last slides, with other organizations. And this can be done only by having shared agenda and putting together a shared agenda. So what, for example, Andrea presented in terms of materiality, collective materiality analysis, quite unique and innovative approach. Each organization are used to do materiality analysis, but as a single organization thinking about their perspective. Here we are proposing, let's do this together. Let's understand from the beginning what are aspects that are important for our mission. And let's have an agreement, a master agreement at front of our initiative, making sure that each of us will see their return of investment and will remain engaged over time.
Michele mentioned to us, sorry, not Michele, it was Andrea mentioned to us to start with a baseline analysis. And what I'm hearing from you is to really maybe start with agreements of collaboration. So if someone's sitting at their desk thinking, I want to do this, this is what our movement needs, should they start with the baseline analysis first and then use that to figure out how to do their partnerships, or should they start with partnerships first?
Very good question. So if you have already a mission, you know, for example, Italian MS Society, we want a world free of MS. This is our mission. And you want to partner with someone that is going to share the same view and ready to develop an agenda that will meet your mission. You can start from materiality analysis. But if you have an idea and you need to consolidate this mission, at that point, you can decide from the beginning to, you know, to understand, first of all, which kind of organization you are. Because if you are a multi-act-like organization, you can think to partner successfully. This is the point of baseline analysis Andrea mentioned before.
Yeah, okay, great. So then let me go to Michele, you presented to us the Master Scorecard. And what I wanted to ask you then is, where does the Master Scorecard fit in? Like, at what point would people come to the Master Scorecard? We've talked now about starting with your relationships, about moving to your baseline analysis. And I'll just check if Michele is, yeah, there you are. So Michele, at what point would people who are attending the event today and learning about how this might work for them, when should they expect to be working with the Master Scorecard? And you're on mute.
I always make this mistake. Yes, the people who will attend the meeting, in my expectation is that they will be curious in using and in try to use this Master Scorecard and indicators and aspects in evaluating a research project or their own research project. And of course, the Master Scorecard is not a standalone piece of MULTI-ACT, but is strictly connected with baseline analysis, with the governance model, and with the stakeholder engagement. And it is a sort of, it's one of the practical output of MULTI-ACT. And it is a sort of translation in an effective tool of the principle of MULTI-ACT, which are multi-stakeholder and multiple perspective in evaluating a research project.
Terrific. Okay, so that helps us sort of understand where that dimension fits in. I want to come now to George and to Sophia and ask you guys, like, you were showing us through the tools, and you showed us a lot of detail in that, but also essentially the simplicity of them. How much time could this take up? Like, if I was part of a network really now starting to do the practical work, how much time should I be budgeting to be spending on doing this? My question is, you walked us through quite well around what the tool looks like online and all the different questions and how there's a lot of content on there and how well organized and clear it is. For people who are considering adopting this, and are maybe thinking about how much human resource they'll need and how much time it'll take to manage all of this information. Do you have a sense or a guide to people around how much time this could take up just in using those tools online?
First of all, one of the big advantages, I believe, of this solution is also taking advantage of technological means that actually the burden can be shared through more, and also basing the whole multi-stakeholder participatory state of it. But other than that, all the tools, everything that has been delivered is by definition created as to be as user-friendly and as I told you before. Instead of just putting somebody in the middle of such a vast entity, we have pathways and the information that the user at any stage can consult. So I believe that it's really the cost and the effort is that quite minimum for the goals and the gains that they stand to get.
So George, do you think it would be a full-time job for somebody to do that, or it's not? Is it not? You can't think of it that way. Like how could I plan for my human resources to do this properly? I wonder if that might be a question for Paola, but from your experience of the online tools.
Yes. Well, maybe I'm not the best position to say, because I'm quite familiar with, of course, such tools and web tools. But as to the actual responsibilities of somebody that will maintain and do also this circular updating of the initiatives, you know, where they place their heart in terms of aspects indicator, I really believe that it's definitely not a full-time job or anything close like that. It's just a tool, you know, facilitating more rather than, you know, something that will absorb, you know, severe resources. It's, I don't know, Paola, if you want to comment something to that.
Yes, and if I may add as well, actually the toolbox is there to support actually less time invested than otherwise done, you know, so it streamlines and has organized and developed the methodology on how optimally all these processes can be done using the toolbox functionalities. And primarily, one does not have to input all the information for all capabilities of the toolbox at once. Of course, there are different phases, as presented also through the governance model and the multi-act framework. There are different phases, so indeed it's not a full-time job.
And so then, Sophia, it sounds to me like, and from what I've seen of the tools, it's something that's really a choose your own adventure. You can work at it on your own pace. It's a really simple tool because you guys have done all the back-end work to make it really easy to sort of pick what suits you. Would that be a right way of describing it?
Yeah, I would agree to that.
Great, good, okay. Deborah, I want to come back to you because my question on this is that patient engagement has been like a really big topic of late. What I've been hearing recently in other networks to do with value-based healthcare is that during the COVID epidemic, we've seen less patient engagement, and all that great rhetoric of better patient engagement, better patient relationships hasn't been maintained during these stressful times. And so coming back to the multi-act model, what makes it different from other general concepts where we hear better patient engagement, better patient involvement? How does this add something different? What's its additional value?
Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed, the COVID pandemic call for a reshift of responsible research and innovation. And in this context, the patient's engagement could really provide an added value because it allows to all the stakeholders to maintain engage the stakeholders. So we can really, for example, use the digital technologies to empower patients. And as you mentioned, the difference of the multi-act approach with respect to existing approach is that we really want to capture the experiential knowledge of patients. So in this time of emergency, their experiential knowledge, for example, in the healthcare process, is really helpful in design agenda that really can impact on their on the healthcare. So it really provides us a guide on how to reach a transformational mission.
So then, Paola, in that way, building on what Deborah's just said, could the response to COVID, and especially thinking of long COVID, be another way that multi-act could be adopted by people responding to that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, one aspect that perhaps Andrea couldn't have time to present is that this can, the framework can be used in a cyclical manner, in a way that can, one of the added value of this approach is that you cannot be, I mean, a strategic plan for organization. We learn from COVID that can last for at least 1 year, but then you need to be able to react, and multi-act is organized in a way that your organizational model, your agenda can be changed according to external emergency like COVID, because it's a multi-stakeholder agreement, you know, and this is going to impact at the same time with all these stakeholders. Different from an organizational model where, you know, you have fixed strategic plan for 5 years, where it's very difficult to change this, and this was one of the major side effects of COVID. So sure, responsible research innovation, I mean, COVID called for responsible research innovation approach like multi-act, because in terms of social contract, improve and increase social contract, and in terms of be thinking about having, you know, an organizational model that is flexible, resilient, and you know, collective.
It sounds timeless. It sounds really, really well designed. I mean, this is very exciting. I see also a note from Arlene in the comments saying that in the US, she serves on the National Alzheimer's Plan Act, NAPA, the committee, and they will be very interested in this work, which she will share with them. That's great. And Arlene, I'm about to mention also about the final conference of multi-act, which might be a place you might want to invite some of your colleagues to attend, and hopefully the time difference will be compatible. Sure. If there's any other final comments in the audience, please feel free to make them now if you've got a comment like Arlene's about your context. And just before I go to my concluding comments, I just want to check with all of the speakers, Paola, Deborah, Michele, Andrea, Sophia, George, if you have any final comments you want to make before we close. Any final statements, just in case you have.
I just say thank you to the participant again, and coming back to your previous question, you know, research management is time and resources consuming. The challenge is that we don't have the right managerial tool to execute research management. And this is what multi-act want to offer. And in this way, as George and Sophia said, is a facilitating tool. Today, we are not doing enough research management because actually we are more focused on the content of our research, and we are missing a managerial tool to manage research. So the multi-act and digital toolbox is going to facilitate you to think in a way that research needs to be managed in a collective manner and together with the other stakeholders. So this is a
That's powerful. And I think that's probably exactly what would appeal to Arlene. And I also see Dr. Esther Kovacs is saying that she found that very interesting, useful tool. She wants to spend some more time to explore each component. And I would encourage also you, Esther, to attend the final conference where these will be explained in more detail and you'll be able to get an even better insight. To the rest of the speakers, any final comment before I close?
Deborah speaking. I just want to thank the audience and thank you, George, for moderating this meeting. And I just want to reinforce the concept that Paola just expressed, that for each specific category, we need to ensure the representativeness of the community. So when we speak about patients, we need to be sure that we are really reaching the patient's diversity, and we are integrating the community voice and body when we speak about, for instance, patient-reported outcomes. So MULTI-ACT really wants to stress this aspect that we need to ensure representativeness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. Anything from the other speakers before I go to close?
Yes, I'm Michele. Thank you from my side as well to George and to Emma for the perfect organization of this meeting. And from an academic perspective, I think that the MULTI-ACT is very, very interesting because the conventional metrics to evaluate the research, which are based on impact factor, not always are able to catch the real impact of a research project. And any research project needs to have an impact on the society and need to be able to improve a little bit the quality of the life of the people in any area. And for this reason, the MULTI-ACT project is very, very interesting.
All right, wonderful. What I'm going to do is say that you can stay in touch with the project. I've just put the link in the chat on the Twitter handle for the MULTI-ACT project. So that's one way that you can keep informed if you wanted to hear more about that. Do be sure to follow them. And then otherwise, I hope that this has given you a really good bird's eye view about what the MULTI-ACT project and the digital toolbox is, what it wants to achieve, and how you could potentially answer some of your own needs and interests. I want to remind you that even if this event's focus has been showcasing the tool to stakeholders, this won't be the final event. And like I mentioned, there will be the final conference. So that's going to be, get your diary out, put this in your diary, 23rd of March from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Central Eastern Time will be the MULTI-ACT final conference. We really invite you to attend. Like I said, if you follow us on social media, you can keep informed and make sure that you register. During the conference, we will set up a multilateral discussion on what the project has achieved, the impact of MULTI-ACT, as well as food for thought for the future, and hopefully learning about your organizations and how you could apply it. I'm really excited at the prospect of continuing our discussion today at that conference. So I really hope you attend. I do really want to thank the speakers who've given us an incredibly accessible and understandable overview of this really rich and important project. Your work on this is impressive and I think is going to serve the world well for improving our research. So I thank you for that. And attendees, many thanks for your time, for spending your 90 minutes with us. Do take care. And finally, all of the behind the scenes people who've worked really hard to make sure that this all came together. So Sabri, Chiara, Federica, and all of the people from the organizations have collaborated, all the project partners of MULTI-ACT. Really, a lot of work's gone into this, as I'm sure you could see from the detailed slides. So thanks to all those people.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.